Happy Death Day follows a college student who is murdered on her birthday, but for some reason she ends up living the exact same day over and over again. So after a while, she's trying to figure out who her killer is and if she can stop this loop. So yeah, the movie's very similar to Groundhog Day. Very similar. And that was actually one of the things that turned me off when seeing all the trailers for this movie, because I watched it and went, okay, this is obviously Groundhog Day. And when I saw the movie, even the movie came out and said, yes, we know this is Groundhog Day. We know we're going to get that complaint, so just be aware that we're aware. And usually when a movie does something that's very similar to something else that we're very familiar with, but they're aware of it, I usually tend to give it a little bit of slack. For example, there was that Shia LaBeouf movie that came out 10 years ago called Disturbia, which was very much Rear Window from Alfred Hitchcock, and they even admit that. And in The Force Awakens with Starkiller Base, they kind of admit that it's another Death Star. Sometimes it's best to not do those similar things, but if you're fully aware of it, then I can give it some slack. And knowing that, Happy Death Day is actually a pretty unique surprise this year. I mean, okay, unique's probably the wrong word because, as I mentioned, this is Groundhog Day. We've seen this kind of story done before because of Groundhog Day. In fact, I think there was a movie that came out earlier this year, Before I Fall, that was very much Groundhog Day again. So I didn't see it because it came out the same weekend as Kong Skull Island, so you know which one I had to see first. But with Happy Death Day, what actually makes this somewhat fun and entertaining is the fact that it's more of a horror comedy than anything. The trailers pitch it to you as a straight-up horror movie, but this one actually has a lot of humor to it, and it also has somewhat of a heart. The main character in this movie, played by Jessica Rothe, who I've never seen her before. The only thing noticeable that I've heard her from was La La Land, but I can't even tell you who she was in La La Land. But anyway, Jessica Rothe, there's an E at the end, so I don't know if you say Ruth or Rothe. Anyway, she's actually really good in the movie for the kind of movie it is. And her story arc is very similar to Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. She's a complete bitch. She doesn't care that much about anyone else but herself. Even her sorority sisters, she could give two fucks less about. And throughout the movie, as she starts dying and reliving the same day over and over again, she starts to gain a little more humanity and not take life for granted. So by the beginning of the movie, you really dislike her, but as it goes on, you just kind of warm up to her and you're like, okay, you're starting to redeem yourself, and now you're kind of charming. And that's where the movie works best for me, once this character starts gaining a little more humanity, and once the comedic elements start flowing in, because the first half of this movie, honestly, didn't impress me all that much, because it just didn't feel like it had any energy to it. I know it's pitched as a horror movie, so there's not supposed to be a whole lot of energy to it, but I didn't think it had a really good way of starting out. And in the back of my mind, I'm just waiting for all the Groundhog Day elements to arrive. So I wasn't a big fan of the first half, but the second half definitely kicked it into high gear, and I was having a lot of fun. There were a lot of funny moments to it. There is some heart to it, and there are some legit thrills to be had. The other complaint that I have comes near the end, and I can't say much because I'll be spoiling a big part of the movie. It does something in horror movies that I hate, where they have to go back and explain certain events from different points of view. It's incredibly lazy, and there are two things that are keeping this element from ruining the movie for me. One, I'm really enjoying the middle part of the movie so much that this little thing at the end isn't too destructive to take away my enjoyment. And then the second thing is, this is Blumhouse, who have really started to get a lot better with their productions. However, I feel like with a lot of their horror movies, with the exception of Get Out, they have this problem where the end of the movie usually has to do something out of nowhere that makes you rethink other elements of the movie, but it feels very inorganic. It doesn't feel natural in any sense. So that's just kind of something I've expected from them, again, with the exception of Get Out. But on the whole, I was really surprised by this movie. This movie's not going to land in the slot that I saved for the biggest surprise of the year. The current movie holding that title is It, which I didn't expect to be good at all, but it ended up being fantastic. But Happy Death Day is still a good movie, just not a great movie. If you go into this knowing that it's the plot of Groundhog Day, but with a horror vibe to it, and you know that the movie's aware of it, then you might have some fun. Just be cautious about what comes at the end, because that could either make or break this movie for you. But I definitely recommend it. And that's my review for Happy Death Day. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on the movie, if and when you've seen it. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.